Now we're going to look at ledger lines. So far, we've looked at notes on the stave in treble and bass clef. But sometimes when we're reading music, we need to go get higher notes that go higher. Now we're going to look at ledger lines. So far, we're in treble and bass clef, we've looked at notes only on the stave lines and spaces. But there are times when we need to go beyond these lines and spaces because we need to play really high or really low. So when we need to go above the lines and spaces, we need to create our own smaller lines, which are what we call ledger lines. A ledger line is just a short line that seems to be floating above the stave. However, you'll notice that they are always equal distance away from the lines of the stave. So you can see that I'm trying to write my ledger line and keep the spacing even. We can add as many ledger lines as we want. And this is where we can hang notes. So when we're creating ledger lines, we might actually start by creating a note run that goes from our very topmost space, which is our G, and then onto our first ledger line. Okay. We can go above our first ledger line into the space above the ledger line. And we can even go on to a second ledger line. When reading notes on the stave, we've learnt about our saying. So in treble clef, it's every good boy deserves fruit. So if I was to write that, every good boy deserves fruit. So this means that the top line is an F line. This is going to be useful when we're trying to read notes above our stave lines. So when we are stepping up beyond our staves, it's important to think of it like this. If this is our F line and we're stepping into the space above our F line, it becomes G because the next letter in the alphabet is G after F. Therefore, if we're going on to our first ledger line, the next letter on from G, now in the musical alphabet, we repeat back to A after G, so this is in fact going to be A. If we go on to the space above our first ledger line, this is going to be B because B comes after A in the musical alphabet. And then as we step up onto our second ledger line, this becomes C because C comes after B. We can do this in reverse as well. So if we want to go lower than our stave, so we want to go down to 2 lines below the stave, we'll work in reverse. So we know that this bottom line is E. If we go backwards through the alphabet, we can identify the notes that I have written here. So if we have our look at our first note, it's in the space directly below our stave line. We know this is E, so D comes before E in the alphabet. So this is our D note. And if we go on to our first ledger line below D, we have a C. So we're going in reverse down the musical alphabet for this, anything below the stave. If we then have a note that's hanging off of our first ledger line, below the stave, this becomes B. And then on our second ledger line below the stave, this becomes A. So really, it's not hard to read notes on ledger lines if we know where we're going to start from. So it's really important to memorize the notes on our stave so then we can step our way up through the ledger lines. Sometimes when you're reading lots and lots of ledger lines, so if I read up to here, it can be really hard to work and time consuming. So another way to think about it is to count down 8 lines and spaces. So if I count down 8 lines and spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I landed here. This is a G note, but up the octave on our 4th ledger line. We can do with any of these. So if I look at this C note here, if I count down 8 lines and spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is our C space. So you can see that we have a C up the octave. So whatever way you like to read above the ledger lines are really important to use in music because it extends our range of our instruments and creates interesting melodies.